Adam, Adam,
Hey,
hi.
how's it going?
I'm so excited to be talking to you tonight about this particular subject.
Oh, so many thoughts, so many feelings, so many mental notes
Some of
taken.
them, I imagine you actually, I imagined you taking actual physical notes. Like there was like a binder, like a book of shadows, one might say, that you have.
You might think so, but
Mhm.
no, this stuff really sticks with me when I'm just watching it and reading it and experiencing it. So, yeah, I've had a huge deep dive into Burkittsville this past week. So,
Which is more than I feel like most people in Burkittsville can say about Burkittsville. Guys, this is an all new episode of Why Are We Like This, the show where me and Adam Collins break down the sort of formative pop culture of what made us the way we are today. And this week is special because we're tackling a subject that I think is near and dear to both of our hearts
mhm.
for I think a pretty similar reason, which is Blair Witch Project came out in the year of our Lord in movies. All the movies came out in 1999. As far as
Yes,
I remember from my childhood, every single movie in the world came out in 1999 simultaneously. And this one was a biggie. I saw this movie in a double feature screening. It was Eyes Wide Shut was first, then Blair Witch Project.
oh, that is so
Back to back.
99. That is so
Yes. So
1999.
1999, I got so nauseated during the screening of this that I had to leave the theater. I could not handle the shaky cam, like the handheld thing.
That's the case for many.
So that was not a good harbinger of things to come with me and being able to watch horror movies in theaters, because this is definitely the movie that started one of the biggest trends in modern horror, which is the found footage horror film.
Hmm.
Um, Guys, if you like Paranormal Activity, or if you even know about it, if you know anything about any movie that was like a horror film between the years of 2000 and I would say like 2015, maybe recently we've gotten a little bit away from it, but we're still making a new paranormal movie. So we're still
Yeah,
making VHS, like that just came out, and we're still making Blair Witch projects. So up until
yeah,
today. Go ahead.
for sure.
It's funny. When I was doing a little bit of research about this, I realized that this, and I believe, was it Wreck, like the REC movie, like the that movie came out around similar time, or was it this and like one of the J horror movies came out around the same time and kind of made an equal impression in their country as it did in the US. So it was like this weird, synchronicity happening of the found footage idea and concept. William Harold saying this felt like the biggest movie ever when it came out. Yeah, this movie tried to pretend it was like an early ARG. This movie tried to act like it was real. I remember the websites being like, "Have you seen Heather?" and all this stuff. Like it was a very early viral
Hmm.
marketing push by the creators of this film.
That's what
Um,
was so special about it.
is this a movie? Was the first Blair Witch movie like one of the ones that like might be in the top? It cost the least amount of make, and then it like got the most amount of money, or was that Paranormal
Yeah,
Activity?
no, I know Blair Witch set the initial record, and I think Paranormal Activity eclipsed it.
Mm-hmm.
I could be wrong, but I think budget to profit. I think Paranormal Activity had it beat by a little bit,
Yeah,
but Blair Witch Project, it it was it was very singular in its vision. It was not trying to be overly ambitious. It was kind of an experiment. And these filmmakers, were making a story about independent filmmakers.
mm-hmm.
And the thing I love about the Blair Witch Project, especially as a former film student, is when I watch it, I have so much empathy for all three people working on this, because
Yeah,
I remember being thrown together with crews and you don't always jive, and everyone has their own way of doing things on a set, especially when you're young and coming out of film school.
mm-hmm.
Like everyone's very opinionated, and I'm sure you've had some experience with that as well.
I literally have avoided doing actual production for this reason. I'm like,
Okay, yeah.
this sounds traumatic for everybody involved. I don't want to
Well,
be
I
in
mean, there's a lot of
this.
fun to be had too, but it takes a while to find a crew that you work well with, and that's
Yeah.
why in the professional world, so many people work together repeatedly.
Mm-hmm.
But I love the dynamic between these characters, and what was unique about it when it came out, especially, is like you said, was the belief that this could possibly be something that was happening, and the reason I feel like there was an initial backlash to the Blair Witch Project was because a lot of people felt duped,
Yeah.
and I find that hilarious now. But back then, people really struggled with that concept. They really felt like, oh, okay, like they've been watching Unsolved Mysteries and all these things. Do you remember? Do you remember the show Sightings was it with Stone Phillips? God,
No,
that's going way back. But there was a show called Sightings, which was like an unsolved mysteries like adjacent show that was just all about like all across the country. You know, people saw things like UFOs and ghosts and Sasquatch and whatnot, but it was presented very seriously, like 2020, and it was awesome. It's called Sightings. Check it out. But things like that in the 90s were feeding into the Blair Witch Project, I feel like. So by the time that came out, there was an appetite to believe in something like this. And that's what I was getting at.
I was also going to say, I don't know that much about like the filmmakers behind it, because there was somebody who was not on camera, right? There was an actual director, right? There were two directors.
Yes. Daniel Myrick and Eduardo Sanchez were the two primary directors. But yeah, it was very collaborative. Like everyone wore all the hats basically on that production.
Yeah, I mean, like absolutely. But they were the ones that were sort of like behind the scenes, or at night they were sort of pulling all the strings, so that the reactions of this movie are very genuine, because they would go and like mess with their tents and steal their food and get them lost, and they sort of they kind of took this like Dogma 95 meets Kubrick meets actual like or like Apocalypse Now style thing, where they just wanted to be so verite that these people felt like they were actually in danger. I feel like a lot of the time, or at least were incredibly uncomfortable.
And that I love the simplicity of the two cameras as well, because the film is having its own film versus DV debate, which is really fun from like a nerdy film student perspective. You know, just inherently you have this clash of media, which is very disorienting, but it's how you see things from different perspective during the Blair Witch Project. And it's such a limited perspective, which is why it forced people's imaginations to do so mumuch work.
Yeah, I mean, I was recently watching VHS 1994, which I honestly think is maybe the best one they've done yet. And I was remarking to Eric, I was like, it's really, I think that like at this point it's hard to imagine what it was like to see Blair Witch Project for the first time, because at this point I'm just so frustrated with like the POV stuff, because it's like I need to turn my head. I get really nervous if I like can't see the direction I'm seeing in. And the whole thing that makes POV scary and handheld movie scary is that they're always looking around. They're always looking like somewhere else, and you just know the thing is going to be in the opposite direction or right behind them or in the place they just swung the camera to. And it's so disorienting and it's so visceral to put you in the seat. It's almost like being stuck inside someone's head and looking out of their eyeballs.
Yeah, you feel it's, well, there's like an inherent sense of claustrophobia when it comes to found footage stuff, especially you know, when we're seeing it from the camera's perspective, whereas like Paranormal Activity 2 and a lot of more modernized found footage movies have a lot of these fixed cameras, which is a great way to, you know, kind of cheat the found footage premise and still preserve it at the same time. And as we get into, you know, other Blair Witch movies, I'll talk more about that. But this first film was so limited, and it's to the point where like it's frustratingly limited. Whereas like you're literally looking at the character's feet sometimes. And the whole movie, you're just like, am I going to see something? And you're just waiting. And I remember when I initially saw it, I bought into the idea that it may have been real.
Yeah, because it seems unedited. It seems complete. It just seems like, and this is just what was on the camera. Like it seems like nothing was edited out. Like Adam says, the feet, like you just hear them breathing and chatting about whatever for most of the film. Like it is just.
But that's what's like realistic mundane about it. That's what's realistic about it, because people, if they are leaving the camera running, they're not going to be like, you know, having a conversation where they're frustrated, like aiming it right at somebody, unless they're trying to make a point or be a dick. And these characters are dicks to each other in this first film, especially. But I think what's true to life is the fact that they let the camera hang down by the side and stuff like that. But I really like the idea as well. I again, like this is me going deeper than maybe like a casual audience would, but because they found this footage, the thing about the film footage is that someone found the film and they had to find the audio tapes as well and sync it up. So I wonder what that process was like syncing up this audio.
Was that how the audio was? I guess, did they have mics? I can't remember if they had mics that were separate.
Yeah, so they kept talking about the DAT recorder. Like, we got to get the DAT back. We got to get the DAT back, and that refers to the audio recording equipment that they were using, that they were renting for the film.
Oh yeah, I guess I assumed that was for the external audio, and that's why you can't really hear anything besides like a muffled sounds outside. The DAT back. Like, yeah, I remember that. I just assumed that was the external audio, and they all had like mics that were like, just picking up internally, or like that they were just using audio.
Well, I thought like maybe the digital footage was like the overriding audio, but then there are distinct scenes in the black and white film footage where there's dialogue and audio. Mm-hmm. So it's just interesting thinking about how they would, in the Blair Witch universe, whoever found this footage, how they put that together. That's kind of what I'm getting at.
Yeah. Jeremy Miller's asking, if this film was real, why would a studio ever release this movie? It'd be pretty messed up if the studio wanted to make money of this type of situation. Well, let me explain something to you.
Werner Herzog's Grizzly Man. Okay.
Well, also, there was no studio. That's what makes this one of the most successful independent ventures of all time. This was submitted to Sundance. It was not backed by a studio. These people put their own money into it and submitted this as a film. It eventually got picked up for distribution, but only in like a limited release. There was no studio trying to make money from this. This was a student home film that was made.
The now defunct Artisan Studios were the ones who ended up distributing it, and at least for home video. And then they were bought out later on by Lionsgate, which is how they got the rights to it. But yeah, if you watch that original Blair Witch movie and the first sequel, which we'll get into in a little bit, those are both Artisan releases, at least on home video.
No, I had no idea. I knew that there was a Blair Witch video game. I knew that the Adam Wingard movie, and I did remember Blair Witch 2 Book of Shadows, which hilariously decides, what about the Blair Witch people needed was more of the teen stuff and less of the found footage thing. We can just get rid of that and just focus more on anything besides the found footage element, which honestly, looking back, is sort of refreshing. It's sort of refreshing that they decided to go in a different direction, because they didn't even know yet how inundated the market was about to be with found footage horror films. It's almost like they were like, yeah, other people are going to do this better, and Blumhouse will come along. So we're just going to. So Joe Berlinger, who very famously made some found footage horror films, found footage documentaries that were sort of horrific, including the Paradise Lost documentaries about the Memphis 3, the
West Memphis 3.
The West Memphis 3, the boys that eventually were acquitted, but were in jail for. Not even acquitted. They had a weird loophole, but basically they were accused of killing these young children and just kind of shunted through the judicial process and unfairly put in jail for a very long time. Were called Satanists. It was horrible. And this guy Joe Berlinger is a documentarian. Got Metallica on board to do the music for this 3-series documentary about these guys. Got them out of jail, amazingly. He also made the Bundy documentary as well as the Bundy biodoc with Zac Efron. But in the middle, before that, he just was doing the Blair Witch 2 Book of Shadows, which is so innocuous. It's so incongruous with the rest of his oeuvre that it's
pretty interesting.
Yeah. So is Adam Wingard as a filmmaker for one of these, which he did the Blair Witch 2016, which is again, this is a guy who did You're Next, The Guest, who did Godzilla versus Kong. A Blair Witch movie is not exactly what I would have assumed he would go to. But I guess, I don't think maybe you take a Blair Witch movie because you think you're going to do it to be famous. I don't know the names Daniel Merrick and Eduardo Sanchez as particularly well-known filmmakers. Wasn't this kind of their big claim to fame?
They didn't go on to do much additional work. They, have producing credits on the Wingard film and the Book of Shadows film, but for all intents and purposes, they haven't done a lot, at least as far as theatrically released films are concerned, since the Blair Witch Project.
And none of the stars did either. Heather Donahue, they used their real names, which
Heather Donahue appeared in the Freddie
Blair
Prinze
Witch.
Jr. comedy Boys and Girls. She had a small role in that, but yeah, these three people didn't do much in terms of acting.
Because I don't think they were actors. This is kind of the point, right? We're talking about the Harmony Korine kids style of, style of making movies. You know, it's just sort of like hire non-actors for the most part, and like you'll get authentic experiences. Like the whole point of this was to make it feel real. So what better way than to hire people that aren't like real actors and sort of put them in precarious situations and just film them Squid Game style as they're forced to deal with increasingly intense situations, and just let them sort of make up the dialogue as they go along.
Yeah, I mean, I think they all had some acting experience, but Heather's the only one I know that went on to do additional roles. But Book of Shadows. So here's the thing: the year 2000 is like such a big year for the Blair Witch franchise. There's so much that happened that year. Mm-hmm. So after the initial film came out, it was an enormous hit, as we've established. And there was this immediate appetite for more information on the mythology of what happened with the Blair Witch. Now, in the original film, they don't talk a whole lot about what actually happened. Most of the exposition happens early on with the townspeople. They refer vaguely to certain events, like bodies were discovered disemboweled at Coffin Rock. The witch was supposedly left tied to a tree to die. Yada yada. But it's incredibly vague.
Typical witch stuff. And those people aren't actors either. They're literally just townspeople in Burkittsville, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and those were definitely non-actors. Those two fishermen are hilarious. They're just kind of mumbling under their breath. But there was an appetite for more information about the Blair Witch, and so there was this immediate like dump of content. There were the books, the Blair Witch Files, which were a series of young adult books that were initially, I think, released in Europe and then released in the United States. And they're relatively hard to find now. You can only buy them used on eBay and Amazon, as far as I'm aware. Mm-hmm. They don't have like Kindle or audiobooks of the Blair Witch Files. But these were books that, they hired some aspiring writers to like expand on the Blair Witch mythology. So you got, like information about Rustin Parr, who was the guy in the 40s who murdered the children and told them to stand in the corner of the room so that they wouldn't see the witch. They expand on Ellie Kedward, which is the witch herself. And then these games came out, which I played. They were terrible. There was a trilogy of them.
The ones with the PC games, right?
Yes. There was Rustin Parr, there was The Legend of Coffin Rock, and then there was the Ellie Kedward tale. And all three of these games were like bare bones 3D graphics on Windows 98. Terrible. And I distinctly remember I bought the third chapter and I played it, and the mechanics were so messed up that my character just ran in circles. Like when I ran, he would spin and shoot his gun in the air. And they had like no ideas for like monsters in this. Mm-hmm. So they literally take the stick figures from the Blair Witch Project and animate them and turn them into monsters and have them chase you around.
I was about to say that I think I remember them. It's sort of like, you know what it is? It's a precursor to the Slender Man sort of PC games, or like the like ones you play online, because it's just sort of like the minimal scares thing and the verite style. I don't think translates to video games the same way. If you want to translate verite to video games, you kind of have to make them like 8-bit, or like make them like, kind of corrupted video games or cursed video games or whatever. You have to like make it analog in a different way. You can't just take like the found footage like dynamic and replace it like in a video game. That's weird,
Did you play those Slender games? Because I can imagine you getting pretty annoyed with those pretty fast.
I do not like games where there is an open universe in which I have to just use a map or like use my sense of direction, because that's just never going to work.
Did you play the Outlast games at all?
I played a little bit of Outlast. I also I get very frustrated and very lost. Like I played recently the Firewatch, I think it's called. And like, the one with Harry Crane from Mad Men, where he's like, it's something like that. I got lost immediately. Like I couldn't find the first task to do. And that's basically been my experience with all the video games of the Blair Witch, is I go into the woods, I get lost, and like nothing happens. Like it's nighttime, but there's nothing spooky happening. I just can't figure out where to go, if I'm going in circles, what I'm supposed to be doing. And I get really frustrated. And this is why people don't take me on camping trips that often, I'm assuming.
Well, their loss.
Honestly. They're lost.
Honestly, the modern video game, which I'll talk more about soon, that is leaps and bounds beyond these PC games. These were such flawed, rushed out, crappy games that were just capitalizing on the IP, and they really didn't have a whole lot of thought behind them. But what's great is if you go back and just look up some of the cinematics, the commitment from the voice actors is astonishing. Oh God, it's so good.
Well, query whether like the Blair Witch was in part so good because like the backstory was not fleshed out. When I think of it, when I compare it to like something like, let's say, the Fear Street mythology of like the Fear Street trilogy, it's sort of like, yeah, over explaining stuff can sort of take out the scary part of it. Like what was so scary about Blair Witch is you never saw anything. You heard them like say, "What is that?" And like you don't even like you barely even see anything. Like it's just there's nothing. It's just their reaction to it and like the blurry camera and like the way that they're freaking out that makes you feel like the sense of like dread. You know,
that's why I think and Wingard's film is like a good balance between the two. Whereas I feel like to start getting more into Book of Shadows, that one goes way too literal, and I appreciate some of the ideas behind Book of Shadows because when they wanted to rush out this sequel, it's like, what do we do? Well, we're not going to do another found footage. We're going to do like a narrative film.
Which is crazy because why do people think that they watched the first movie? What made the first movie popular? Like what was different about the first movie than other horror movies?
They were trying to rush out an edgy, teen-friendly thriller with the Blair Witch label on it with this. And that's what they did. They have this band of misfits. And the thing I think that's smart about the movie, even though they don't really deliver on it that well, is that the idea is these characters are the audience. These are people who are obsessed with the Blair Witch Project.
Right.
And
so they're in the world. Yeah.
Yeah. And so they want the whole idea is we're basically watching an Unsolved Mysteries episode because this is a reenactment of real events that took place after the release of the Blair Witch Project, in which a group of amateur researchers and filmmakers go into the woods. They try and follow up on some of the legends, and chaos ensues. But the problem with the movie is if it stayed in the woods, I think it would have been a better movie. It probably still would have been great, but it leaves the woods after about 25 minutes, and you spend basically an hour in a giant warehouse with these characters going steadily more insane, and it becomes really hard to watch.
Well, yeah, and I mean, again, like you say reenactment, but like I feel like the reenactment element, while it might be conveyed, is like never really like addressed. Like reenactments don't look like very well produced films, you know, like reenactments don't appear like this. And to even say something is a reenactment as opposed to a fictional movie, it's already like acknowledged there is an artifice to it. Like this is just people pretending to do something. And it kind of makes it worse in a way because you're like, oh, this is like not, they're acknowledging within the film that this isn't real. It's like the opposite of what Blair Witch did. They're acknowledging that this isn't real, but it's not real in a different way than it's actually not real. Like this movie to me is when people complain about Season of the Witch in terms of like, how can you make a Halloween movie without Michael Myers in it? I'm like, well, really well if you go back and look at it. Season of the Witch is an incredible film.
And Michael Myers is technically in it. On a
yeah, you're right. He's in it. He's technically in it, but he's not like a character in it. Like in that world, Michael Myers is not. He's a fictional character. Season
of the Witch is, I think pretty much all horror fans are in agreement. Like that movie's worth the damn.
Oh, I should send you the link. I did a whole podcast or a video thing with Rick Radiss's alter ego and some friends about like why I think Season of the Witch. Like 2 days ago, just why Season of the Witch is like the best.
It's wonderful.
It's a great movie. Great concepts. But
it sweeps me off my feet when I watch it. It's just such a Halloween fantasy movie, and gets at the idea of anthologizing the holiday in a really fun way.
Right, and I think that like so this sort of is the same application of that argument, which is how can you make a Blair Witch movie without like the concept of the Blair Witch movie, which is like it's a found footage horror film.
Yeah, but I like the conceit of the movie. Like let's play with the story more. Let's change the format. I'm not inherently against it being a narrative film. I think that's okay because it also plays with found footage. It literally the characters engage with finding tapes of themselves and what I like I like a lot of the ideas Book of Shadows introduced, which is the way these woods mess with time.
Oh yeah,
and perception.
Cool.
Yeah.
We'll get into that with the wingers thing too, because I think that I honestly think, as I texted you earlier, Blair Witch Blair Witch, the Adam Winger movie walked up upside down so King Kong and Godzilla vs. Kong could run also upside down.
Yes.
I think that whole Hollow Earth sequence in Godzilla vs. Kong, the seeds were planted early on with Blair Witch. And I was like, I remember watching the last 15 minutes of the Adam Winger Blair Witch and being like, well, this is interesting. Kind of wish they'd focus more on this spatial issue, or the ways that he kind of messes with your perception of space. And like you said, time becomes an issue. I think it's kind of vaguely hinted in the first movie that something weird is happening time-wise, because their clocks are all saying it's nighttime versus daytime.
They keep coming back to the same place.
Yeah, coming back to the same place. And it really hits on something that is, that movie, The Descent, that terrifying movie, The Descent.
Oh, yeah.
That movie is terrifying, almost in spite of, but it's terrifying without the second half where there are monsters. It is a movie about female spelunkers who get caught in a very deep underground when a a little bit of a earth shift closes off the entrance and sort of locks them into this cave where they've been, and now they're trying to crawl in these increasingly tight crevices and getting stuck, and they have no lights. It was all shot with only the lights.
Brilliant.
It is the most horrifying claustrophobic movie, and then it turns out there's vampires down there. So
there's murderous golems. Yeah.
But honestly, the terrifying part of this movie is just watching these women get deeper and into these narrower crevices.
Well, and the accidental deaths are more terrifying than the creature deaths. Like falling into the darkness when you're spelunking. That's when they're just hanging on to the stalactite with the little hooks. Oh, it's so stressful.
And that movie also, it was a little bit to Blair Witch. He decided to shoot. I recently did something on this movie. He decided to shoot with just the lights that they could have on them. So there was no external lights in the caves. It was all whatever they had on them, the flashlights, the glow sticks, whatever they had. And that's very much how this movie is shot as well. And it's kind of the reason it makes it so effective.
You talking about Wingard's Blair Witch?
No. I'm saying that The Descent was inspired by Blair Witch. Yes. But when I think of Blair Witch and what became the sort of parody when they did Scary Movie of Blair Witch, it's the scene of her crying to her mom and dad, I'm so sorry, or I'm so scared, and she's crying, and she's shooting it from below her. She's kind of whispering into the camera, and there's a little bit of a snot bubble, and she's just freaked out. It's just sort of her she believes it's her last moment on Earth kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that is so effective because you truly believe that you're not watching acting. You're just watching a person be terrified that they are about to get murdered.
Parodies of that scene are low-hanging fruit.
Low-hanging fruit. And honestly, it's sort of it really undermines why this film, the scene and the film in general is so iconic, because what truly comes across in this movie is that these people are not acting. They are seriously not acting. They are seriously getting annoyed with each other. They are seriously lost in the woods. They seriously don't have enough food. They are getting on each other's last nerves. This is coming across in a way that I don't think even the best performers could have given, because as you found out through the backstory or the documentary of the making of Blair Witch, the filmmakers just basically were getting them lost and having one of them throw out the map, actually throw it out, and in the middle of the night they were taking their food away and fucking with the tents and sort of just kind of putting them under these intense, probably somewhat abusive, as we'd consider them today, strain to get this movie made, to get the real sort of reactions that they needed. Now, these people were aware that they were doing a movie and they were aware of the horror movie angle of it. I just don't think that they were prepared for how hard the filmmakers were going to go at them, or what the situation would feel like, or how long it would end up being before they got out of there.
Yeah, I think a lot of that original film, was done on the fly, and the filmmakers have said that they appreciate all the credit they get for leaving things up to the imagination. But they said, the reason the Blair Witch wasn't in the first film is we didn't have the money.
Yeah. And the second most effective shot in the Blair Witch and it's truly effective because it's so scary. It's the only thing you get, any confirmation of anything supernatural really in the film, or anything spooky, I think, that you get as a visual confirmation, besides those things hanging from the trees, is that final shot in the film where they go into the house and they look, and one of their missing members, one of the 3 missing guys, is standing in the corner of the room, just facing away from them, like staring at a wall, just head down. And I remember seeing that and being like, oh, that's a nightmare. Like and he's, just standing there blankly looking at a wall, like face completely turned away and just not responding to them. And the way that was sort of like almost like one of the last images of the movies before we see her scream and the camera drop, it's just so terrifying. Because this movie did leave everything up to the imagination because they couldn't afford it. But I think it also, the one final imagery that shows to me that like they did decide to do some directing on this. They didn't just like completely leave them alone in the woods to go talk about whatever they felt like talking about, which is 90% of the film, is them just talking about whatever they feel like talking about.
Yep. Whatever comes to mind, whatever they're pissed off at each other about. There are alternate endings to that original film, and the one they chose, I think, is the best because, they tried a couple other things with what Mike was doing at the corner, but that final image is just so haunting because for me, that the final 10 minutes of that first movie is when you discover that house. And for me, once you finally see that house shouldn't be there. Like that's how it feels to me. And it's really unsettling that house is there. And then when she's finally in there and you're hearing the voices and you're hearing the noises, it's so disorienting. All bets are off. And what's frustrating in Book of Shadows is like they're in the foundation of that house, but it's disappeared. That's where they're supposed to be. That's Rustin Parr's house, like when in the over-explanatory.
Oh yeah. That's his big like weird mansion house. I remember that. Yeah.
But I like the idea that house maybe manifests itself, only at certain times, kind of like Dracula's castle. So
or like Twin Peaks is Black Lodge. Like it's there sometimes, and other times it's not there. You kind of have to wait for the right moment.
Yeah, you got to wait for the curtains in the woods.
Yeah, you have to wait to see the curtains in the woods. I mean, there is some like Blair Witch Twin Peaks analogies to be made. I'm sure.
Yes.
Like
the mystery of the woods, I think, is what draws us to it. Yeah.
The mystery of the woods, of the entities in the woods, the idea that it's really just you can't tell if it's just you and your friends turning on each other, or like your friends being possessed by someone, people making cruel and inhumane choices, and whether that's just a feature of humans being put under stress or whether it's a supernatural outside force is, I think, something that's played on a lot, not to mention like the whole Blackout Lodge angle of it. But Adam, tell me a little bit about the stuff that gets filled in during the books and during the games and during Book of Shadow. What kind of backstory are we getting here? You mentioned a couple names.
Yeah, so like Book of Shadows, the Blair Witch Files, and that trilogy of PC games, they really expanded what was hinted at in that first movie. And so for anyone who's interested in like the literal like legends of the Blair Witch, that's as explanatory as it gets. So like if you go, there's a Blair Witch wiki page, so you could like go and get like the gist of these young adult novels. But what the common thread for all of this stuff are some big broad strokes. And that's the Rustin Parr aspect of it, which is a local resident of Burkittsville who claimed he was hearing the witch's voice and invited children to that house in the woods and told them to look in the corner because if they turned around, they would see the witch or some variation of that. And then he took out these kids, and then he was eventually put to death as a result. And then the Legend of Coffin Rock was like a ritualistic sacrifice in this prominent area of Burkittsville on the river where they discovered these bodies. And then Ellie Kedward herself is the Blair Witch, and she basically there are 3 versions of the story. She was tied to a tree and left to starve to death, and then when they went back for her body, it was never found. The other version from the video games, which is pretty gnarly, is that they tied her to a wheelbarrow and wheeled her out to the woods and just left her in strapped to a wheelbarrow. And then they went back and the wheelbarrow was empty.
Yeah.
And then And then in the Wingard film, and this is the one I like the most, is that she was hung from a tree, but she was racked to death at the same time. So weights were strapped to her, which elongated her limbs.
Yeah.
Which we'll get into in terms of some of the imagery of that film later on. But yeah, I am interested in how like there are discrepancies in the story, and I think that's the best part of any good mythology, is when the urban legends don't quite line up, but you can pinpoint the things that they have in common.
I think that's exactly true, and I think that's. I mean, that's what's really cool, because this is almost like it's almost like oral storytelling. It's almost like a, what would later be we'd understand to be creepypastas. This is just and that's what makes creepypastas so effective too, right? It's the idea that these are all real. You have to treat them, or not creepypastas, the no sleep stories specifically. You treat them like they're first person, and that you can't, in the comments of like Reddit, you can't like pretend, or you can't act like this story was written by an author. These all have to be taken at face value, first person stories about something that happened to somebody. And I think that kind of oral storytelling, like tradition, like the idea of like chain letters, or like this happened to a friend of a friend, that's sort of this is like the cinematic equivalent of that. That's why it works, that it's so grungy looking and that it's so lo-fi. It's because like it needed to be, in order for like it to be believable and for it to be as scary as it was, because it's the whole thing, the whole premise of it is hinged on like, this could be you. Look, you're like right in their eye view. Like you are seeing what they see and hearing what they hear and dealing with what they deal with. And it's so completely terrifying.
The Blair Witch and creepypasta harken back to my favorite aspect of things that go bump in the night kind of storytelling, because characters like Pennywise and the devil himself in a lot of books are predicated on belief. Candyman really delves into this. Candyman is very much, one of the original creepypastas, because it's all about word of mouth. It's all about generating belief. And I love Noel DaCosta's new movie because it really leans into that even more than the original movie. Slender Man is such an interesting phenomenon. And, the real life tragedy, even though that girl survived, that's a whole separate conversation. But Slender Man itself as a legend is pretty fascinating, and the content it's generated. The video games I know probably frustrate you, but what I love about them is they are just completely nightmarish, and like there's no way to fight the Slender Man. You're literally just wandering around through the night, and there's one point where I got lost in a mine shaft. And he just kept he kept popping up. But Blair Witch really kicked that off. And the more people talked about it and speculated about it and debated it, the more it fed into the legend and generated interest in the property. Yeah. And I love the popularity of some of these creepypasta legends. I think Slender Man never really found his home in like narrative film or media. Not yet. But that Channel Zero series.
Oh, the Channel Zero series is, I was about to bring that up. That's amazing.
All 4 seasons. I love that show.
That show just gets better and better. I think my favorite season, though, is season 2 with John Carroll Lynch and the Norman House. It's just so sad and poignant and creepy, and like, it's so weird. Like, it's just like nothing like I've ever seen in horror before, really. I mean,
that is one of the best purgatory stories I've ever seen.
I know, and it's no easy answers either. Like, it's not like a clear villain here. It's just in the one with Rutger Hauer, just so good. Now, let's be clear, they did make a freaking Slender Man movie. It was just
and it's trash. It's beyond trash. But you know what? A film that came out last year that I think is Slender Man adjacent is The Empty Man.
That's to say, I guess The Empty Man.
Yeah, The Empty Man is definitely in that vein, but The Empty Man isn't a tall, lanky guy, but the legend is a similar idea. And I love it. Like, for anyone who hasn't seen The Empty Man, it's a little too long. What's that?
I said, I didn't remember if you loved it or not.
I like it. I don't love it, but I think it's solid and it's worth seeing for horror fans because there's so much in it that's really, really gave me goosebumps. And James Badge Dale is an underrated actor. I like seeing him lead a movie because he is such a good proxy for the audience because he's so like confused and like unnerved by what's happening. But basically, the empty man is a spirit that is summoned if you go onto a bridge, not necessarily at night, but you blow on a bottle.
Which must happen a lot of times accidentally. I think you have to have the intention to do it, right? Like you have to know about empty man. It's part of the virus of it, aspect of it, right?
Yeah, and that essentially summons him, but it's still very vague what that means. And I'll leave it at that, because if you haven't seen The Empty Man, most of the fun is tied into not knowing a lot about the plot. So just check it out. It's a cool movie. It's just also a little too long.
It's a little too long. It's also based on a comic series that it's supposed to be a prequel to. And the comic series is very much not about the empty man, but about a reality in which people would just keep suicide clubbing themselves, basically. And that it's a virus. It's kind of like a meme virus, like a mnemonic virus. And I think like this was an attempt to both recreate or to create an origin for it, but then also just kind of make it its own thing, because it's also very much not that focused on that element of it. It's almost like how what's it called? Resolution and The Endless are kind of companion pieces, but like you could watch The Endless and just think they have a really weird scene in which they go visit some people in the woods who are like looping through time. And you could watch The Endless, or you could watch Resolution and be like, that's just a really cool story about a junkie and his best friend trying to like keep him sober by chaining him to a radiator one weekend and going through some supernatural stuff. They don't necessarily need to be like both seen in order to incorporate that they're different stories. But when you watch them together, you're like, oh my God, this is one story that's just happening like in different iterations. And I think that's really cool. But getting back to Blair Witch, Adam, did you have any expectations going into the 2016 version? I'm saying 2016. I'm assuming that's when it was.
Yeah. So the thing that's interesting to me about the hiatus is it really was basically 15 years. There was that huge output of content in 2000, 2001, which was the sequel and the games and the books. And then it went quiet for a very long time. And in the 2000s, the way I understand it is Lionsgate acquired the rights, and they just didn't know what they were going to do with it for a long time. And then after Wingard did Your Next and The Guest, both of which are great. If you guys haven't seen them, go watch them.
One of which stars Brendan Meyer.
Yep. And The Guest is so great.
Guest is freaking phenomenal. And so is Your Next is my favorite home invasion movie of all time.
Yeah, Your Next is fantastic. Great double feature with Ready or Not.
Oh my God, yes.
Very similar energy. But yeah, I just think what was interesting is no one had thought about Blair Witch for such a long time. And found footage movies really took a breather until Cloverfield and Paranormal Activity came out, because those were the two big ones. Everyone talks about Paranormal Activity, and they don't talk enough about Cloverfield.
Absolutely.
Because Cloverfield was big budget compared to Paranormal Activity, which gets a lot of credit, as it should, for being successful low budget movie. But I love Cloverfield. I think Cloverfield is really cool. I love big monster movies, and what I like about Cloverfield is, like it strains believability with, oh God, why is TJ Miller still holding this camera? But I like the perspective of seeing the scale of a monster like that. That's terrifying. Like just actually seeing it knock buildings down because it doesn't know how to move in a city. It's not scary that monster's malicious. It's scary that monster doesn't know what it's doing.
Yes. And wow, great point.
I love Cloverfield, and
that's brilliant point about it. I've never thought about it like that. That's why it's scary. It's not scary.
It's like a giant praying mantis is just knocking buildings down, and it doesn't know what's going on, and it's like, what are we going to do? But Paranormal Activity really revamped found footage, so that I think paved the way for Blair Witch to come back. And
you know why specifically they made Paranormal Activity is because Jason Blum passed on Blair Witch, and he like regretted it so much. Like he was just like the bane of Jason Blum's life that he passed on Blair Witch Project, that he was like a decade later, he was like, fine. For I think that is the most that's the movie that was made for the least amount of money, an independent movie made for the least amount of money, and had the biggest ratio because that movie broke everything. Like it was made for like $20,000 or something, $10,000. Yeah.
I dig the Paranormal Activity, the first three especially. I'm not as hot on 4 through 6.
Oh, I like the marked ones. I'm a big fan of Chris
I
Landon.
need to revisit the marked ones.
Chris Landon did the marked ones, and like we love Chris Landon now, right?
I know. I like Christopher Landon as well, but I need to revisit the marked ones. I only saw it once. But the first 3 are the ones I've seen more than once. I own those. And I need to revisit 4 marked ones. And then I know Ghost Dimension is supposed to be poop.
Yeah.
I actually never saw that one. But when Blair Witch came out, and I saw this come up in the chat, but it was marketed as The Woods. And the thing that I think is brilliant about that is they generated a ton of buzz about this movie before they ever revealed that it was Blair Witch.
Really?
So like what they did is they advertised that Adam Wingard's next film after The Guest and Your Next was The Woods. Something evil is in the woods. It was very vague, and it was the same poster as Blair Witch, except it just didn't have the Blair Witch stick figure. It was red and black with like trees, and it just said The Woods.
I swear to God, that's not how I remember this going down. I remember being like, Adam Wingard is doing the Blair Witch movie, and I am here for it. Yeah,
so that came to pass because they revealed at Comic-Con what it really was. So
gotcha.
The Woods was advertised for a while as his next project, and people were getting excited about it, horror fans especially. And then Comic-Con, they said, we're going to have a screening of The Woods. And what was brilliant is they screened the movie, they packed the house, and then as this audience was watching it, they realized it's a Blair Witch movie. When they went into the theater, all the signs in the lobby were for The Woods, and while the movie was happening, they switched them all out for Blair Witch posters. And so when everyone came out, it was Blair Witch everything, everywhere. And what was great is Wingard and the rest of the filmmakers could finally talk about it being Blair Witch.
Oh, that's so funny.
If you look it up online, Jen Yamato does a great Q&A panel with the filmmakers at Comic-Con about it. It's really quite interesting. And the thing I love about Adam Wingard's movie is it's a passion project. They love the mythology. They love the original movie. Mm-hmm. And I think people, I was a little surprised that there was a little bit of a backlash to it because people were like, it's too sleek, it's too like they show a little too much. And I'm like, they show just enough, in my opinion. Like they up the ante, which I think is really important because I didn't want another Blair Witch project. I didn't want to, if you're going to do a new one, I don't want to just see nothing.
Yeah.
I want to see a little bit of something.
Well, especially because like we've come further. This movie had a budget. Even if it's like DIY or like, was sort of viral marketing the movie, it sounds like. I feel like the whole point of getting someone like Adam Wingard is because he is so good at sort of like twisting a genre, almost like in a Rian Johnson-ish way, but like way more like not grimy, but way more horror focused than Rian is. It's about like he takes like something like a home invasion movie and turns it into essentially like first of all, the casting of it by using mostly indie directors in the cast was A+.
Yeah.
But then putting in
Ty West running around in that movie.
Ty West running around. Amy Steinmetz. It's Joe. What's his name? Joe Swanson. AJ. Not TJ Miller. AJ Bowen. The whole thing is just fantastic. And we have Barbara Crampton. Everybody in this movie is great. But then taking the home invasion and sort of almost like Hush did. Like Mike Flanagan's Hush. Like it takes the home invasion and then it's like, yeah, but like what if instead of just it being this very scary strangers like thing, what if it becomes like Home Alone and they come up against a force like they had no idea was going to be even more intense than they are. Like somebody is just has been waiting their whole lives for this situation.
Honestly, Drew, Your Next is the adult Macaulay Culkin Home Alone sequel.
It is absolutely the adult Home Alone, but it's a reluctant Home Alone. Like it is very much like she didn't go in there being like like she was. The thing's great. I don't.
That actress, by the way, she's so vastly underused. Your Next, she's great. Sharni Vincent's her name. Australian actress, really, really good in Your Next. Fantastic. But and this is something I'll echo Bibiani on all day. Step Up 3D, such a fun, awesome dance movie, and she's the star of it, and she can dance her ass off. Like she is like a world-class dancer, and just the fact that like the two biggest movies she did were You're Next and Step Up 3D, and the range between those two movies is insane to me. So just wanted to put some love out there. She's a great actor.
He also, who's in the beginning of that movie? Not that we're getting so off track here, but like, who's in the beginning of that movie? It's Larry, your boy, my boy too. Like Larry, what's his name? The guy with who does Glass Eye Productions? Is that the name of it? Larry. Oh my God, I'm gonna have to look up his name. He looks kind of like Jack Nicholson.
Larry.
I think his name Larry.
There's a lot of Larrys.
Let me see if I can. Glass Eye Production. Is that the name of it? Production. Yeah, I think
Not
it is.
Larry,
right?
Not Larry Miller, not Larry
Well,
Charles.
it's like Larry Fassbender or something. It sounds like that. Oh my God. Yeah, Fessenden. Larry Fessenden. You know this guy. He's the guy in the opening of You're Next who's like got the girlfriend and he's playing Betty Davis's eyes. He's in like Until Dawn. He's like in all the horror movies. Here, I'm gonna send you a thing.
Yes, no, I got you. I got you.
You got me.
Yeah, I got you. I thought
you were like a huge fan of him for some reason.
No. I haven't spoken ad nauseum about him. I recognize him, especially most recently from The Dead Don't Die. I'm a big Jarmusch fan, so yeah, he's a sneaky, prolific guy.
And he's got a good horror suit. Anyway, that he's in that. So is the this woman who I think was in the first season, along with Amy Steinmetz of The Girlfriend Experience, who's also a great actress, that Australian chick. Anyway, the point being that that's a great series, and I feel like maybe they gave it to Wingard based on how he subverts the genre of the scary home invasion in that movie. Like it doesn't ever become cartoonish, but it does become like a Home Alone style, like home invasion horror movie, but then just turning the tables on the home invaders, which is great. And I love that movie so much. And The Guest is sort of, I think, more straightforward in terms of like what kind of movie it is. Like it's just a thriller about like someone.
What if an evil, traumatized Captain America showed up at your house?
Yeah, exactly. What if that other kid showed up, the new captain, the new for a second Captain America, Wyatt Russell? What if Wyatt Russell showed up on your front door claiming to have been best friends with your son who died in the war? And
yeah. Exactly.
And Brendan Meyer's your brother, and that's it.
There's an alarming amount of Schmoedown people who haven't seen The Guest, and I'm just like,
upsetting.
I'm like, people, like, not only is Brendan great in this movie, like Brendan is us in, like, he's the audience very much. He's just like, what is happening? Like,
it's no Brendan in The Color Out of Space where he literally goes down a well to find a dog, and you're like, what are you doing, Brendan? Don't do that.
Color Out of Space is fantastic as well.
Fantastic. Brendan has really good filmography. This is why I joined the Schmoedown, is so I could play the guy whose movies I already liked. But getting back to Blair Witch, though, Wingard's involvement, I'm still trying to figure out the timeline of like why Wingard, why now, why this movie. I mean, it wasn't a Blumhouse film, was it? It wouldn't make sense.
No,
if it was,
so it's Lionsgate. And the thing is, they wanted to do something with the property to, bring it back into the mainstream, but they weren't sure, where to take it. And because Wingard was playing with a hot hand, it was just a good time to bring him in, and they pitched him on the idea of Blair Witch. And he, what he said, and I know this because like I dug deep into my Blu-ray of the Blair Witch. I watched a bunch of this. I had commentaries. It was fascinating to me. So I heard Wingard talk a lot about this, and what he said was that someone's going to make this movie, and if someone else makes it, I'm going to regret that I didn't do it. And he went with his gut, and he's like, I'm going to do this. And then they brought in Sanchez and Myrick and the original filmmakers and got them involved. And what was funny was those original filmmakers wanted to do a narrative film that was a prequel about Ellie Kedward, the Blair Witch, and then Robert Eggers' The Witch came out, and they were like, never mind. They're like, and Robert Eggers' film is one of the main reasons why the Fear Street trilogy annoys the piss out of me.
Oh my God! You're telling me.
It feels freaking childish compared to like The Witch, but I get that they're different things, guys. I get.
But I don't get that they're different things. I feel like those were complete. Like it was a complete. But we don't need to go into it.
I know, but like I respect that. Like they recognize the quality of Eggers's film. They're like, okay, we can't do that, so let's lean back into what we did right, and they put it in Wingard's hands, and they went all in on the found footage. But the thing is, because they set it in the present day, they could play with the technology, and they could,
so
and
smart.
setting up earpiece cameras was a perfect way.
The drones. I mean, like brilliant ideas. And then it creates all these like lockbox situations. What I love when filmmakers, and not to bring it back my brain is blinking for a second, but not to bring it back to Rian Johnson or somebody like Jeremy Saulnier, but like, the way that they kind of create these lockbox stories that are like, how does somebody escape a room, or like, how do you solve a mystery where you know who did it, like right at the top. Like, it's these kind of lockbox games that I feel like directors do to like challenge themselves and challenge audiences to be like, let's see how, like, let's take a very simple premise and like be like, how would we create the conditions for it? So in this one, it's like, yeah, okay, so they have their cell phones that they didn't have the first time. They have drones that should be able to ostensibly allow them to look above the tree line. They have like GPS. There are people looking for them. There's like, they're in two separate groups. There should be enough there that the filmmaker really, I feel like Adam Wingard really had to challenge himself to create ways that these things would not work. And it's not just like, oh, every technology fritzes out simultaneously, which would have been the easy out. It's like, no, the drones work differently than like the comm links and the cell phone issues. And like, it's all like a different kind of spooky magic. And I like that.
And to back it up, just to give a primer for people who haven't seen it or haven't seen it since it came out, the way it connects back is this is all about Heather's younger brother, James, who, it's a cold case, never been solved, no bodies. The people who went missing in the original Blair Witch Project never found.
But they found the footage. Someone found the footage, yeah.
And her younger brother is working on like some sort of thesis project or grad student project, and decides he's going to go into the woods because recently someone on YouTube has found footage from the woods that may or may not have something to do with his sister Heather. So I think like the thing is, you kind of need to suspend your disbelief because it's been such a big gap, but
and we know it's not real this time. So that's the first suspension you have to do. We know going into it now, but I think it's also like the audience. Well, go ahead. I don't want to interrupt your point. Go ahead.
No. That was more or less it. Is that we accept the premise of the Blair Witch Project at this point if we're going into this. So now we're building upon that reality, and that's what I like. They set it up really well with all the new cameras, so that we have options and there are checks and balances. These characters are trying to plan everything out so that this is like a safe camping trip.
Yeah, so that this won't happen to them because they've seen the movie. These characters in the diegetic world have seen the Blair Witch Project. They know what happened.
Yep.
So they've tried to prepare for every eventuality. And I guess the main thing that originally they can't prepare for, and it's such a clever idea, is they can't prepare for each other. They can't prepare for the stressors of what's going to happen within the group, like the tensions that will rise within the group the first time somebody trips and falls and slows them down, or the first time they get revealed something that they don't like about somebody else and they start distrusting each other. Like that's the real fracture that begins the Blair Witch Project before the technology even really starts to, or like, right as the technology starts to go. It's the way we turn on each other. And that's what is 90% of the Blair Witch Project, is just them turning on each other and not knowing if it's real or not, because it's just people fighting and just being assholes to each other as they get more and more desperate and hungry and cranky and like scared and tired. Like, it's just the way that humanity works. And that's what's so scary about it.
I love how like the woods are infectious in the 2016 movie as well.
Yes.
As far as like in very literal body horror ways with the Ashley character who cuts her foot. That's very,
oh God. Yeah. Could not watch it.
You can't watch that part.
I'm surprisingly squeamish about body horror, and like that part, I definitely had to I was with my friend Tom, and we were both like turning away from the screen, being like, no.
Like capital letters, Tom.
No. My friend Tom, he actually writes for Clickhole. So
Say hi to him.
I will.
Let him know I have lots of more nonsense where that came from.
I will absolutely. I will send him the link to the show and be like, Tom, we are the hugest Clickhole fans here. But no, we were watching this film. We were like grabbing each other's arm, being like, "Ugh, no, 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 no." And the last 20 minutes, we just sat enraptured. And it really surprised me afterwards to see that so many people didn't have that many positive things to say about it. And I have a theory, which is the same reason that I think that this movie was A, originally marketed as something else, and B, was not called Blair Witch 3 or like Blair Witch The Return.
Mm-hmm.
There was a reason it was just called Blair Witch. And it's a theory I've recently developed after having, no big deal, this is going to be a name droppy story, so don't mind me being Garth for a second. But I recently had drinks with the new writer of the new Scream movie, who also is one of the co-writers of Ready or Not, and he's working on a bunch of new things. But his big point was
Busick?
Yeah, Guy Busick. Yeah, that's him. Yeah, he's like now a real buddy. Like, he's cool. We hang out. We talk about Twin Peaks. He's the best. But he was saying that, like, there's a reason it's not called Scream. Or just called Scream and not Scream 5. And there's a reason that the new Halloween was called Halloween and not Halloween, the new
11.
Generation. Yeah, it's because there's a barrier to entry now with a new generation that they don't want to feel like they have to watch like 8 movies or learn all the back lore. It's almost like you have to present the idea to them fresh. Like, the older generation will like get it and they'll understand that Scream is not the same as the original Scream. But like, you have to, for new people, that's why the trailer for the new Scream movie doesn't seem very funny. Like, it just sort of sets out the premise and sets out the rules. And I love the poster that just has the tagline, "It's always someone you know." Because it's like a simple premise, or it's a simple tagline, but it also it conveys what you need to know about Scream, which is this: it's not going to be a random killer. It's going to be someone within their group of people that you've been introduced to. That's who the killer is going to turn out to be.
Can I just say, like, this is neither here nor there, but I am so excited for January and February because of Scream and The Black Phone, the Scott Derrickson movie with Ethan Hawke.
Oh, I've not seen a trailer for that. The Black Phone.
Oh, God. So The Black Phone, I don't want to get too off the rails here, but The Black Phone is Scott Derrickson's new movie. It's getting a lot of good buzz. And Ethan Hawke plays a magician who kidnaps children.
Oh, my God, yes.
And he has all these different masks.
I love Derrickson. Oh, my God, Derrickson's the best.
It sounds, the trailer was pretty fascinating. And those movies are both going to clean up in those months. Like, they're going to crush.
Let me tell you something. I'm already excited to be in the time period we are now. Like, the good movies and good TV show, like, are already coming out. You can feel it. It's like Midnight Mass. Mm-hmm. It's like Squid Game. The new season of You is out. Like, that Batman movie trailer, the Batman, that got me so pumped. I was like, there's a horror Batman. There's a horror Batman movie. Like, that's going to be so good. That's what everyone
that Batman trailer was
I could go off.
No, it was I like that it felt like a horror movie trailer. Like, still got it's got a lot pressure on it. I know that is probably unfair, but I said this last night on another show. I just hope Matt Reeves just made his movie, and the impression I got from this trailer is that he made his movie.
He made his movie, and by the way, I have to apologize to Colin Farrell. Like, I was doing that thing. I think he should leave me. Where I'm like, I hate this. I hate that he's the Penguin.
That he looks like Richard Kind.
Yeah, and then I like turn around. I'm like, I don't hate that he's the Penguin. I like this for him. I like that, like, he's the bridge over between the Batman fighting, like the year 1 stuff, like the Batman fighting, and the stuff that Eric gave me, the Long Halloween series, where it's like Batman fighting organized crime to Batman finding out there are people that are just as batshit, pun intended, as him, and being like, oh no, like, now I've got to step my game up because there's crazier people out there than just Falcone and his people. And like the Penguin specifically is the bridge between those two worlds.
Yeah. I am excited that Batman looks kind of scary in this, so I'm hopeful for it.
Terrifying. He is terrifying. Like, he's scarier than Paul Dano in this. The way that he just takes those bullets straight to the chest and just keeps coming at you. The way he seems actually angry and not that interested. Like, he when they say, "Who are you?" and he doesn't say, "I'm Batman" or "I'm Justice," he just goes, "I'm Vengeance." And he just the way the bat signal is made out of the gun that killed his parents. Like, that is some.
I like that this Batman seems more suicidal than I've ever seen Like,
This
and
Batman seems insane. This Batman
yeah,
seems like I don't even know what he's going to find that's different between him and the Riddler. Like, honestly, like I think that's going to have to be the thing that he discovers over the course of the film is what makes him different than the Riddler, because they're both vigilantes. They're both cleaning up the streets. They're both trying to expose the GCPD and the mobs and stuff, like the connection there. Like, so what does make him different than the supervillains? And I think this is going to be the movie that we finally get that fine line explored a little bit more.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
There are a lot of great comic book crossovers. I'm a huge fan of pulpy comic book crossovers, especially when it pertains to like horror characters and superheroes fighting each other. So like Batman versus Predator, classic comic book.
I got that for Eric for his birthday.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good.
I got him Alien versus Terminator, I think, versus Predator. That's the one I got last night. We were at my dad's in Santa Barbara, and he almost got Eric forgot to take it with him, but it was Batman versus Elmer Fudd, which is just amazing.
Honestly, though, like I would love to just turn Batman loose in the Burkittsville woods.
Yep. Yeah,
and see him try and solve that mystery, because I think
try to give him anything like that.
Because I love all the Scarecrow stuff with Batman. I love those storylines where he, gets trapped in a nightmare world and has to navigate it and face his actual demons.
Freddy Krueger.
Yeah, because the Scarecrow is Freddy Krueger. So, like, I think Batman Blair Witch crossover should happen. Not that it's going to be a priority, but.
Look, Batman has all the money in the world, and he's got like Kingsborough said, Batman's always been insane. I think what would make it hard for Batman to be in a Blair Witch type situation is that Batman is always alone, unless he has Robin with him. He is a lone person. So like the idea, the dynamic of the group and having this fracture, like I'd almost rather see the Justice League in the Blair Witch Woods. That's like because you need the dynamic of the group. And the way that they all turn on each other to be like a big part of the terror there. It can't just be like one lone guy in the woods being like, "Oh, come and get you, Eileen," or like Elaine or whatever her name is. Like, it's gotta be something like that. And I think, I don't know, like I love the idea of Batman being, as King Pearl said, insane. He's always been insane. He's also always been very corrupt when you think about it, because he works with the GCPD, which is 90% corrupt people. And he's a vigilante, and he's very rich. And so he's like a cop who doesn't have any right to be a cop. He's like the police are just like looking the other way by letting him investigate crimes. And in this movie, you literally see him in a room with the FBI, which means the FBI on a federal level is also cool with Batman. And I just need to know what's going on there. Like, who do they think he is? Don't the FBI care? Like, if the GCPD doesn't, don't the FBI want to know who this masked vigilante who beats people to death basically with his bare hands, it looks like from the trailer, literally just beating a guy in so hard that we see a flashback from a cut back to Selena Kyle, who we just saw loading a gun in the right before this in the montage, the quick montage. We see her loading a gun, Batman beating someone so hard with a fist that Selena Kyle, when you cut back to her, is going like, oh my God, like if you're gonna kill him. Just don't beat a man to death with your bare hands. Jesus Christ.
I am very, very excited with what we've seen thus far. What I think is very promising, especially, is the idea of the Riddler as like an actual serial killer.
They say that. It's so cool.
Yeah.
Well, also I noticed in the trailer, it's not that he's a serial killer. They're taking Gotham and they're doing something to Gotham that they rarely do in movies, which is rooting it very cemently rooting it in the here and now. It is what it says in the Chiron is serial killer live streams.
Yeah.
Which is like, okay. So like, it's no longer like this could take place anytime. It's like, no, this takes place in like 2021. I wouldn't be surprised if there's like a fucking, COVID subplot or something like that. Like there's just, it's very much in the here and now, which does change the dynamic of like him being this great detective and like what that means to be able to pull off these crimes and to be able to contact people. Like it's always been the Joker taking over the airwaves or hijacking something. No, it's like now they can just live stream. It's like a serial killer doing a live stream. And that's something that we don't have in this society in general, because everyone moved on to all the crazies moved on to mass shootings. And that's like the copycat trend now. We don't have serial killers doing live streams, but it seems very plausible that in the world where there is a Batman and that's somebody that's like being held up as a force of good, that there would be in like Zodiac killer style people or like BTK style people who were doing live streams of their murders because they wanted not to. It's not that they didn't want to get caught; it's that they wanted to be seen. And I think that that's like a fascinating element to bring into it.
It's definitely tapping into. I think every good Batman film is of its moment, and I think that's what's special about it. I think a lot of the most iconic characters need to engage with the culture of their time, and as long as they're earnest and they're digging into it from a genuine point of view, I think that's why Batman 89 and The Dark Knight hold up as movies of their moment that also stand the test of time. And I'm hoping that Matt Reeves does the same thing. Yeah. Now, I'm not trying to be too much of a ninja to tie it all back, but I just have to say...
No, go ahead, please, because you know me. I can go off on like a million tangents, but go ahead.
Batman's on all of our minds. Trust me. Yeah. I get it. I just want... but when you mentioned live streaming, it made me think like what I liked about to wrap up the Blair Witch stuff. I like that Wingard's film was about presenting this mythology from a modern point of view.
Yes.
We get a glimpse of what the Blair Witch may or may not be physically, but what I like about it is how vague it is and how fleeting it is, and how even if you freeze frame it, you really can't see a whole lot.
And yet he does something truly amazing in the last 20 minutes of the film when they find
out. That is such a thrill ride.
That is, it's some of the most creative camera work.
The tunnel. Can we talk about the tunnel?
Go ahead. Go off. So
all right.
What happened in the house? What happened?
Okay. So I'm sorry. They go back to the creepy Rustin Parr house, which is amazing, and they expand it. And what I love is that house was like a physical thing that just existed that was on this guy's property. But after the Blair Witch Project came out, people kept visiting it, and he got pissed, so he demolished it. And so the producers for this film had to like comb the internet and get like anecdotal photographs and stuff to recreate an approximation of the house, the exterior.
Or at least the exterior, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and then they created a really cool, like elaborate inside. But then what happens is one of the main characters, Lisa, she falls down. She gets thrown down into this trap door, and the only way out is to crawl through a dirt tunnel that's incredibly small, and we see it all from her perspective. So if you're claustrophobic, it's torture.
It's like that scene in Caveat where he sees the mom and at the end of the crawl space, and he can't like move backwards because like he's stuck.
And her freaking smiling face.
And she's going like this, and he has no choice but to move forward because his leg's broken, and he just turned a corner.
There is nothing worse than a face smiling at you in the dark.
I mean, it's a dead woman, smiling at him and like nodding her head like this. And he's too. I love this actor because he's almost nonplussed. He's like too scared and in pain to even react. So you just see him go.
He's so bearded and tired.
Yeah, it's amazing. But anyway, but like something interesting happens when she's in this tunnel. Like it keeps going. You see her going down, and she's going down. If you've seen Godzilla versus Kong, I think you can like see where this is going, because this is really the origin of the Hollow Earth scenes in Godzilla versus Kong, which is that like she goes down far enough that she comes back up, and like the gravity reverses, and suddenly we're in a place like this temporal and time and place is meaningless thing where like they're going back in time, or like they're meshing through time, they're meshing through space. Gravity is no longer a thing. Like spatial relations isn't a thing. They're opening back doors that lead to. I mean, just it's crazy. It's like an Escher painting.
It's like it's a good approximation of a nightmare. It's we've talked before about how Darren Aronofsky's Mother is not great overall, but what I love about it is the one thing I do love about it is the way it captures dream logic, and that's a really hard thing to deliver on screen. Eternal Sunshine and Science Asleep, Michel Gondry nailed it with those. I think those are both very intuitive with dream logic. But when it comes to nightmare dream logic, that's a different vibe. And I think
Fire Walk with Me is that's my go-to. Like Fire Walk with Me is the ultimate. This is what a dream feels like.
Yeah,
because
that's I mean, that's why we both love Lynch. I think because he nails it. But Fire Walk with Me is up there.
And Mulholland,
This final 20 minutes of 2016's Blair Witch is not only just a fun thrill ride, but I love how it gives you a little bit more, but it raises more questions than it answers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And people really didn't like people really walked away from that movie being like, whatever. And I think maybe because, again, like I feel like this movie, and I was texting you a little bit last night about it. I think this movie was very much like of its time and place, and almost like people didn't want, like people who saw it originally have now lived through Paranormal Activity and lived through the found footage boom, and almost like maybe resent Blair Witch Project a little bit, because it's hard to go back and rewatch. Like the movie it's kind of like Eraserhead. It's kind of meant to be unwatchable in a certain way. Like it is just a grind to get through it.
It's very, very slight.
It's very, and it's hard. I mean, like it's just, it's like watching a home movie.
You're feeling the frustration of the characters too.
I'm feeling the pressure, but it's not like a fun watch. Like it's not like something you throw on in the background or like want to introduce people to. You just have to like sit down and let it wash over you and experience it. And I don't think that's what I think one thing the Paranormal Activity movies did was like make sure that there was a narrative that was keeping pace while you're doing the security camera stuff. So you were like watching stuff happen, even though it was made very cheaply. There was a narrative and a like overarching sense of like a story that was developing, even if some of it, the dialogue was mundane or unscripted. And so I don't know if people were really asking for a new Blair Witch movie. And I think that the people who had never seen Blair Witch or just know about it peripherally from Scary Movie, like had no sense of why this movie was good or different than like, Paranormal Activity or Wreck or any of the other movies that are coming out that or have come out that they've grown up with. That they're more familiar with. Like what made this movie different at all? That it's just like referencing an old IP that they don't really know about. I mean, there's ways that horror IPs can be regenerated, and I feel like this was not the IP to try to remake. Although I do appreciate its creative like use of media.
I think the 2016 Blair Witch, I think it's gradually gaining, more of an audience.
Mm-hmm.
I think when it came out, people were just really hard on it because I think a lot of people have moved on from the original Blair Witch Project. And I think hardcore horror fans are the ones who like this movie. I know there are some who don't, and I'm not trying to generalize, but the people I talk to who tend to like this movie are people who just really love the idea of generational and communal storytelling, and that's what's special about Blair Witch. And I think if they're going to continue this property, we discussed this, I think the next step would be let Shudder have a go at it, or Amazon or just some streaming service.
Did you read my comments about like let's do it as an anthology, like but like I almost was like at first I was like I don't know, because VHS is like already the found footage anthology series, and by the way, the new VHS movie is so heads and shoulders above the other VHS.
I am gonna watch it this week. I just haven't had time yet. I mean, excited.
It's annoying that's also named 1994 to make it just even more like comparable to the Fear Street movies. But it is. They got these great filmmakers. The overarching story is interesting. Like the way they tell the stories is interesting. The way that they're all using these analog media in different ways is super interesting. And the stories themselves are very compelling. It's never like just like, oh, and somebody's wearing like a body cam and it's just like this thing. No, they're all very like well told stories that even without the found footage element would be like very compelling, like scary stories. So at first
I'm excited to see it.
I was a little resistant when you said at first, like that's what Blair Witch should do, is just have like a Shudder anthology show. But the more I thought about it, the more it really works, because you could be going through these different times and places that could all like converge what if style near the end, because again, time and space is really relative. In this world, you could have these little through lines, but it would just, were you thinking episodic anthology or seasonal anthology?
I'm thinking like start very, very modest. Do a 6-episode limited series with 6 different episodes that are directed by different people.
Okay, so episodic. Okay.
Yeah, from all different eras. And I know it sounds a little bit corny in theory, but I love the idea, since time is messing with time is such a tradition of this series. I would love to see someone stumble into a time loop where maybe they are in a different time and they are perceiving events from a different era. And, it's not as obvious as people running around in pilgrim garb, but, like something that shows you that, okay, we are seeing into the past. and we're experiencing this through the eyes of this character.
That's a really cool idea, especially because like, how would your new technology work, appear? How would it be affected by being in the past? Like, I thought the really cool angle of this would be you start like in the 60s, with like some commune of hippies going to like
shooting on like a Bolex on 16 millimeter.
Exactly. Yeah. And move to the 70s, and it's like like home video, like Kodak like style home movies, the big heavy clunky
like
thing.
The best part of Sinister, aside from Bagul, was the creepy home movies.
Exactly.
That so I will maintain that third act loses me in Sinister, which is a shame because I like the rest of the movie, but I love the creepy home movies, and I love the demon.
Oh yeah, and that thing just stays with you like that. Yeah. Those home movies just stay with you, like the imagery from it.
So messed up.
And I would love to see like so the 80s you move to Betamax, 90s you move to the more handheld like devices, but they're still like very grainy. And each of these technologies have a very visual, like very distinct visual aesthetic that go along with it. But what it would be like to look at someone in modern day garb through one of these 70s home videos, or what that would do to the 70s home video to like even be in the same, Marty McFly style, be in the same arena or be in the same physical location as a iPhone, like what those what that kind of media would appear like to the other media or through the other media, especially when you add in like the element of like, there's a Blair Witch, so there's a techno creepy ghost in the machine angle too. I just think that would be the coolest freaking way to just develop an idea that Blair Witch is not even a entity anymore. It is something that is through the machine, and Blair Witch only kind of like can affect you and can come at you through the media. Like, because that's what we started with, and that's like really the fact that we were very visibly in a media, like we're somebody's handheld medium. I would love to see that being like an angle of it.
Well, just to give a little lip service to the 2019 video game, which I'm still playing. I'm only so far in it, but the thing that's really cool about it is it embraces. I know you hit a brick wall in it, and I sympathize.
Just tell me how to get past the first part where you're just wandering around.
Well, the thing is, the tough part about it is you have to. Well, first of all, that dog is the only way you're going to get through anything.
I can't find the dog. I'm lost. The dog is gone.
The dog abandoned you. Then you're hopeless. Then you're screwed. I'm sorry.
Okay, so that's the problem.
Because your German Shepherd is how you survive that game.
Okay, right. I've been searching for the dog for like a day and a half.
Okay, so I'm very good to my dog. I pet him. I feed him treats.
I did not know that was
yeah.
The thing that's supposed to do.
That's part of the strategy. You got to keep the dog happy.
I can hear him barking, but I can't. I think like I can't like reach him.
You gotta call him back. You gotta call him back. But
okay.
But what I like about the video game is you find videotapes occasionally, and you have to run them back. And once you watch a tape, it'll reveal something about your environment that you didn't realize previously, and it'll sometimes change your perspective of what's going on, and then you'll find a physical object that wasn't there previously because you've watched the footage you discovered.
Yeah, yes, I love that Videodrome style. Let's do it. Let's do that.
The sound design is really, really cool. Very, very atmospheric. And that is one thing I wanted to say as well about Wingard's film. The sound design is so great. I love the screechiness of the for lack, it's not literally the witch, but whatever you want to call it, like the creature, the screeching and the fact that thing can just knock over trees freaks me out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
it can affect drones to the point of the drones will be seeing just endless woods where they should be able to see roads. Means that either the ghost is in the machine or reality has changed because, like you're saying, the reality has shifted the moment you enter the woods and you're no longer in your reality. That's terrifying, and you can't tell. There would be no way to tell if it's the machinery that is lying to you and deceiving the people, or if it's reality.
Right,
because we're all experiencing it through this very. It's not like an objective observer filming this movie. It's not Book of Shadows. Like we are getting the sense that the whole premise is that somebody is operating this within the movie. So there's no way to tell whether it's the machinery that is deceiving you or if it's reality. I love that. It's so Videodrome.
And by the way, just a little like fun thing because I got deep into these commentaries. I love sound designers. I love hearing them
Me
talk
too.
about their work because they are the best nerds in the entire world, and the passion they put into their work is amazing. The guys who designed the sound for Blair Witch,
I need to know about them. They made me sick to my stomach. I looked away from the screen. I could still hear it. The bone.
I know, because even if you close your eyes, you hear everything that's happening, and it's even worse. And what I love is a lot of that digital distortion that you hear. They literally gathered like old hard drives and plugged them in and turned them on and held mics up to them while they like threw sand and debris into the hard drive so that you got like all this like digital horrible feedback.
I love it.
I just
I
like
love it.
the way the things they come up with blows my mind.
Yeah. I can't remember which one of these scripts I was writing recently but like the noise, the sound of that something makes was made by rubbing something against a pumpkin. It was the sound of like rubbing a pumpkin really fast back and forth, and that's what accounted for. I'm trying to figure out what script this was for.
One of my favorites is that sounds familiar. One of my favorites though is in the original Star Wars: A New Hope. We made.
Oh, maybe that's what. You know what? That might be it because I just did a Star Wars script. It might have been Star Wars.
Well, when Vader strangles Captain Antilles, he crushes his neck. That's walnut shells inside an orange peel.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Have I asked you about this? Have you seen Barbarian Sound Studio with Toby Jones? Toby Jones with Toby Jones, and it's like a sort of like a blow up meets it's like a very Lynchian Italian sort of like Argento style film, but it's about a guy who's working at an Italian sound studio and like is losing his mind, and he's a Foley artist, so he's creating all the sounds. It's so cool and so grotesque. Yeah, I love it. But I think it's called Blair Sound Studio. Yeah, I know that's it.
Well, I think that's why Blow Up is such a cool movie, because it was like the first one to like dig into that. But I feel like sound designers deserve more of their own movies.
Dude, sound designers
they're the heroes.
Absolutely, dude. I almost headed at the music supervisor conference and annual conference a couple of years ago because I'm just so into like whenever I watch a TV show or movie that has like great song selections and stuff like that, I always manage to like shout it out if I do a review or anything like that. And I think my Better Call Saul stuff got noticed by the guy who did the sound or who did the music editing for that, or like the music coordinator for that. And so he also had to run the guild. So I was asked to like help organize and lead that conference. Unfortunately, I couldn't because I was moving that year, but man, I really wish I had, because that's the thing I love to geek out about is like the soundtracks of films and TV shows, like what went into deciding to use this song.
All right. VideoDrew, can I just mention real quick? Let's give a shout out to the soundtrack to Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2.
That one's, I was about to, this is how I was, Adam, give me a little more credit. I was going to bring it back to this element, which is the soundtrack of Book of Shadows is kind of baller.
It's kind of a banger. All right. It's kind of better than the movie.
It is really, the whole soundtrack is pretty good.
I love how it's like, so I told you this on a previous episode. So my DVD of Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2, it's the DVD CD combo where it's double-sided. So it's the soundtrack on one side, it's the movie on the other. It's hilarious. And that was like, that only happened for a few months in 2000. They gave up on it because there was no traction there. But for some reason, to this day, the only way you can buy physical copies of Book of Shadows is to buy that version. So with Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2, it's like featuring the music of Godhead and Steak Knife. And I'm
my God. Yes, please. Come more Godhead and Steak Knife always.
That is my middle school. Yeah, that is middle school.
Was Steak Knife really the name of the band, or was that just like your?
There's a band called Steak Knife.
Who else? I feel like there's a couple. Is Incubus on?
All right, can I grab my DVD?
I was gonna say, please grab it for me because I need to know who's on it. They do have a couple solid bangers on this. You're almost like, did the guy direct? I don't know if Joe Berlinger did, but it feels like, I guess if you got Metallica to do Lost in Paradise, then he probably just has like a big music background. Like he's probably a music nerd. That's what I'm guessing, because it feels like he got some big talent.
Joe Berlinger, yeah. So Metallica didn't make the cut, but like, all right. So Godhead's on here, Steak Knife.
I can't believe these are real bands.
Yeah. Oh, and we buried the lead. You know who does the score for Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2?
No,
Um,
who?
Carter Burwell, who
No
scored like
fucking
all the
way.
Coen Brothers movies, did this
And
score.
Being John Malkovich.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
yeah.
That's nuts. Carter Burwell. Out of all the people in the world, Carter Burwell did. Okay.
I know.
Okay.
So you have the songs and you have the Carter Burwell score. But yeah, DVD, CD combo, and then on the back you have the scene selection and the special features and the song selection for the soundtrack. Fun story, fun little side note. The little ghost girl who shows up, you see it?
Yeah.
That little ghost girl who shows up throughout Book of Shadows, like walking backwards. I went to summer camp with her.
That's say friend of the show. Is it a friend of the show?
Yeah. I think her name's Lauren Halsey. I can't remember. So she was. I'm older than her, but I used to go to this it was like a theater and media arts camp, and it was a lot of fun. A bunch of film and theater nerds going to camp together at high school age. And I went there, and she went there that summer, and everyone's like, "That's the girl from the Blair Witch sequel," and I was like, "What?" And then I ended up seeing the movie, and she was just in attendance at this camp, and talked about like working on the movie, and just like they just put her in that ghost makeup and had her look creepy. It was kind of generic. But she did her job. But what's more interesting is she played Edward Furlong's little sister in the John Waters movie Pecker.
Pecker. God, I haven't heard that name for a while.
That's an underrated John Waters movie.
Really, truly underrated John Waters movie, but also great call with Pecker.
Yeah, so people should see Pecker. It's great. It's one of Edward Furlong's best things he did after T2. Like everyone talks about American History X. I'm partial to Detroit Rock City. But Pecker is probably his best movie he did.
Yeah.
Other than American History X.
I feel like his life has been tragic or in a certain kind of way where I don't remember exactly what the details of his life what was or are. I mean, is he still alive? Is Edward
he is. So
okay.
a friend of mine wrote a movie that he was in called Below Zero. Starring Michael Berryman from the original The Hills Have Eyes, the bald guy with the big sunken eyes.
Yeah, the big guy.
So what's cool is Edward Furlong plays a screenwriter in that who is experiencing writer's block, so he locks himself in a walk-in freezer to force himself to write a script.
Oh God, kill me.
and he ends up like going into like some deep insanity, and he's Michael Berryman hallucinations and whatnot, but my friend had some good stories about Edward Furlong.
That's amazing.
Basically, if you hire Edward Furlong, just have plenty of weed on set, he'll be fine. That's
he's in that weird what was it called? It was the Bret Easton Ellis movie. The one they adapted one of his books. It wasn't the Canyons. It was one about vampires. It was like glitterati vampires. One of the Olsons was in it, but I remember he was in it, not looking so healthy. But yeah,
he's had a rough go of it, Edward Furlong.
He did not seem like he was doing so well, but that was a while ago. Adam, any final thoughts on Blair Witch? Have you been to Burkittsville? Because I think
no.
Oh wow,
so
really?
I haven't been in person, but there's always time. The thing is, I've always gravitated towards the woods. I love camping. I love embracing the spookiness of camping, and I am the dickhead who, when I go camping with other people, I'm like, this is a great time to talk about the Blair Witch, is it not? Like, I just want to do nothing but talk about creepy stuff in the woods. I want to tell people, like, what would it be like if you saw Jason Voorhees emerge out of that foggy pond?
I know that was me on acid in high school. I was always like, hey, imagine like what would happen if we were just in the Evil Dead right now. Like, wouldn't that be crazy if we were just stuck in the woods and like the fucking Deadites came at us? Anyway.
So I embrace the Blair Witch. I love the idea of adding to that story. I think that's why the Friday the 13th movies are fun, because Jason becomes more than what he literally is. All those movies are bonkers because they're adding to the legend every time.
Absolutely.
Blair Witch is a more grounded version of that, and I hope that they continue it because I think Wingard's film is vastly underrated.
Mhm.
I think people don't appreciate it enough. And I think if it had come out on Netflix or Shudder, people would be like, this is amazing. But
Mhm.
because it was a big budget theatrical release, I think there was a lot of pressure on it. And I think after the success of Eggers's The Witch,
Yeah.
I think having even witch in the title
Mhm.
was a detriment unfairly to this movie.
Agreed.
So I think it's good for what it is. It's not trying to be Eggers's film.
I think that's a great way of putting it. I think that this movie, I think Wingard is so good at doing this. He's so good at taking IPs. It's sort of like, and again, I don't know why Ryan Johnson keeps coming to mind, but he's so good at taking these IPs and doing his own thing with it. And like, whatever people think, be damned. Like, he's going to make his version of Godzilla versus Kong. He's going to make his version of the home invasion movie, and he's going to make his version of Blair Witch. And it's wonderful.
I just hope he keeps making movies, because
is he not doing anything?
He's going to be fine. I mean, Godzilla versus Kong was successful, but like,
Yeah.
I just think he's got a solid track record, and I think he's a genuine storyteller, and he's a genre filmmaker, and I just hope he keeps working.
Yeah, I see that he doesn't have anything upcoming. Well, no, he's doing. Oh, he directed the Death Note. I forgot he directed that Netflix Death Note. That was crazy.
I haven't seen that.
I
but
really liked it. But I didn't have any context for Death Note. Apparently, people who like Death Note hated it. It's the one with Willem Dafoe as.
But that's so often the case with anime adaptations. I think they can honestly, like, hopefully Cowboy Bebop makes fans happy, but like most of the time, live action anime adaptations, people do not like them.
I really like Death Note. I really like Death Note.
I like the creature design in Death Note just from the trailer. I like the
Yeah.
practical design of the creature, but people who love the manga and the animated stuff did not like that movie.
Because I'm recently getting into anime. If you're a big anime fan, like, you are so much harder core than I think, like, even the Star Wars fans. Like, you are just obsessed with, like, or you're just like a real loyal person to the original artwork and the way the performances are. And I think it kind of like bastardizes it to make any sort of live action version of it. But I'm excited for Cowboy Bebop. I've never seen Cowboy Bebop either, so I'm about to watch all of it.
I like the reverse, where we're seeing things like IPs get the anime treatment. So like Star Wars getting Visions. For me, it was Castlevania. Like, I always wanted an anime Castlevania series, so for it to finally happen and be successful and be really good.
Animatrix, that was a great version of that concept. Yeah, I think I'm starting to like get Visions. I was really into Attack on Titan, which I loved. Like, Attack on Titan, I went so hard on it, and now I'm just like obsessed with it. And so I can't wait to see the final season. But that was the first anime I think I ever watched. Then I watched Pokemon, which is, a kid show, but I was getting into Pokemon. And now when I saw Star Wars Visions, I was like, do I really want to start on like a new anime thing? Like, it's so specific in the style and like the
Have you seen it? Have you seen Akira, by the way?
Sorry, Akira. Yeah, I've watched Akira. I found it hard to watch Akira. I did it for Cinema Bias once. I kind of was only like half in. I mean, I understand that it's a marvel of animation, and I like Studio Ghibli a lot, but I wasn't as sold on Akira as I think I should be. Maybe because, again, I don't like body horror as much as I purport to love it.
Akira, I liked Akira, but that's one like watching twice is definitely helpful.
Yeah,
because that first time you're adjusting to everything it's throwing at you.
Yeah. So Adam, speaking of, we will be doing a show in not next weekend, but the week after. Have you found any more stories? I said speaking of, but this is a completely new topic. Have you found any more stories that you wrote?
Well, I've got more of the Shakespeare one. I've got more of the Quetzal one. Okay, and I haven't found the Oliver Twist, but I'm still looking.
Okay, so why don't we save it for next week? I want to get a follow-up, or in 2 weeks, I want to get a follow-up to the Quetzal story. I'm asking my mom as we speak to find my old other diaries because I'm mining this one. And so much of it is just so freaking mundane. Like, I have to say, like, reading through it, I'm like, God, there's a lot about boys. There's way too much about boys in here that, like, I don't even know who these guys are anymore. Like, who am I? Like, this girl is, like, pretty boring in her obsessions, but she is obsessive. Like, she's like the John LaRoche of dudes in middle school. Like, she's just real fuckfish about guys.
Female friends and relationships over the years. I've picked up some fun anecdotal stories from diaries, and one of my favorites was I won't say who it was, but it was she was reflecting on her time in middle school and just wrote ad nauseum about how these two twin sisters always had BO. And I was just so caught up in the saga of their BO that like I was like, please read another installment of the diary.
Yeah, I mean, this whole thing, this diary is so performative. It's so weird. But then I also am so obsessed with the idea that people are going to care what I thought about Greg. No one cares what you think about Greg, Drew.
I want to know everything about Greg. I
mean, Greg, apparently it's like, nobody tell Greg that I'm writing about him. God, who am I writing this to?
Are you talking about how you want to dance with him to Vertical Horizon or something?
I said, I just found out Lauren read my journal. I can't believe her. Now she'll probably tell Greg. Now the whole school. Once again, just super obsessed with the idea of both like, I need this to be read out loud by other people, and like, oh no, this is going to be read out loud. It's so creepy.
Drew, I'm not afraid to admit that I started keeping a journal. And of course I wrote Dear Journal, not Dear Diary, because it's more manly to write Dear Journal. But I picked up that habit because I love the show Doug, like a lot of people. That was my favorite Nickelodeon animated show. And
I loved it.
And I loved the journal entry format. And it got me to start writing my own journal entries at a very young age. And I did that probably elementary through freshman year of high school, on and off. And then I kind of moved on, but it was a really great way to deal with like puberty and adolescence, to be honest.
Apparently, I feel like there is an aspect of me in this journal that wants to be performative in the way that I want to act like cool or act like the characters I like.
We were also performative then too.
Right. But like, I'm just talking about how this girl has read my journal, and I'm like, while I'm on the topic of her, like she said, I'm tacky and that I only carry around a Sesame Street for a bag for popularity. And she carries around Winnie the Pooh around, but I'm not allowed to carry Sesame Street. Anyway, she's my best friend and I'm not that angry. Like I'm clearly writing this to her because I'm clear. Like I'm convinced that she's reading the diary.
You know, what's amazing though about, if you look back at journals and diaries back then, it's so obvious. Like it was like that. Social media is the evolution of that, except now we're sharing it with everybody. I was
going to go with it. And social media is what this is.
It really, really is, because we're writing journals and diary entries for an audience that isn't there yet. But we kind of secretly hope someone breaks in and reads our innermost thoughts because we want them to find them very interesting.
God, I mean, also the amount of times that I clearly like just like in a creepy way, just like cross out someone's name or like rip out a page and then like, oh God, the whole thing, Adam, is so creepy. But you know what? I have the first time that I went on a Star Wars themed vacation with my Hebrew school, and I fell in love with a boy named Andre. So I'll have to read that next time we're here.
A lot goes down at Hebrew school. I know that.
I mean, this was a crazy trip to the Poconos. So maybe we'll talk about our favorite Nickelodeon shows next week or next time.
Let's also swap summer camp stories, because I got some doozies. I got some doozies.
I think something crazy happened to me at summer camp that I'm like regretfully walking out.
Summer camp influenced the kind of person that I am. If I didn't have summer camp, I would have only had high school, and that would have sucked.
My summer camp was, I think, like a pretty Ari Asterish experience that I was just too young to register as an Ari Asterish experience. Like, I think there were some terrifying things going around what I was doing, like the weird like Catholic cult element of this summer camp. Where we spent a lot
I got sent to church camp a couple of times too. That's why I want to get into this.
Well, I'm Jewish though, so I didn't know why we spent hours just silently.
That's even creepier. There's a whole Get Out vibe for you.
Yeah, so we made God's eyes for hours with popsicle sticking hours of just silent God's eye thing, and then hanging them up everywhere like Blair Witch. I was just like, what is this? What is this thing? And they're like, eat the body of Christ. I'm like, why would I do that? This is so scary. We'll talk about it next time, guys. Adam, where can we find you?
Here every other week. I do this. I do the bracket show on Finally Tailored pretty often. But I'm making my last stand in the Schmoedown. Deception versus King Arthur. I think this is going to be a big match. I think it's going to be really exciting for people to see. And we genuinely haven't recorded it yet, so I'm not like making stuff up. I'm just really excited. I'm really excited to play this match. I can't tell you, like, me and Marisol against Khan and Griffin. I think it's going to be really awesome.
You gotta beat him, man. You gotta beat and get revenge for my Stephen King. You gotta put Stephen King on the wheel and just get revenge for me.
Look. After Griffin and Marisol's performances in New York, I said I almost said New Hampshire because I live in New Hampshire. But like Griffin and Marisol just blew the roof off that place, and like me and Khan are along for the ride in this match. It's gonna be so much fun. I'm
so looking forward to it, and I'm really sad that I missed New York. That's just after we were watching it. We had a little party here for it.
We'll see you at Spectacular, though.
We'll see you at Spectacular. Yeah. You guys will come over and say hi. So as for me, you can find me over at Content Candy if you listen to iTunes or anything like iPodcast, whatever it's called, or if you go to Anchor or Spotify, we're over on there. This show, along with all our other audio shows, our video shows are on there, but as well as like actual original content, like me and Lon Harris's Garmin Shows Ya, the Video Chronicles, like a new review show that me and NerdChronic are doing, a couple other things in the works, but you can also find Cinema Bias, bunch of stuff, guys. So please go over there, leave a like, a subscribe, a comment, a review, and if you leave a review and send me a screenshot, I will endorse you for whatever you want on LinkedIn. That's my promise to you. Like whatever you want, I'll just go on LinkedIn and I'll endorse you for it. I'll say you're good at it. So leave us a review. That'd be nice. Otherwise, you can find me at my patreon.com/VideoDrew, VideoDrew across all social media networks and selling sites where I sell cards and games and sometimes clothes. Weird stuff. And otherwise, what's my new deal? Oh, I'm really into Japanese claw games right now. Like games you play online where you you spend money and you get to remotely control a Japanese or Korean claw game and win prizes. And yeah, that's what I'm into these days.
I thought you were saying you were into Japanese clogging, like clog dancing. And I was like, that's a thing? That sounds awesome.
I wish. No, I'm into Japanese spending too much money on fake Pokemon, or in this case, what is this? This is an LED spiral wall lamp that I won. So that's cool.
Okay. So it's not a spoiler for people who haven't seen Squid Game to mention the claw game scene is so hilarious.
The claw game, that felt like I was being seen and attacked. I helped write the honest trailer for this week's for Squid Game. And a lot
really?
Of my
Lon, God, I can't wait.
Lon helped me out, or asked me if I would help out. And so a lot of those jokes that made it through were actually bits that I did. So it's pretty awesome. Otherwise, it's not a bribe, King's Portals. It's normal. Hey, Brendan, we're just heading out. Otherwise, check in pretty soon. Not doing a live in the dark tomorrow, but probably starting it up again in a week or so. Taking a little break because I have a lot of work to do. So if you check me out on RT Essentials, if you watch Mark Ellis do anything on Roku or Peacock, that's usually something that I wrote as well. And yeah, have fun, you guys. Have a good weekend. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. And
go camping in the woods.
Be friends with Batman. He seems great. He seems like he's doing fine. Don't worry about him. See you next time, guys. Bye-bye.